offseason, Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys seem to have more questions than answers. With more moving parts than Cowboys fans would have hoped for, it seems the next few months are going to be even more important for the remaining years of Dak Prescott's current contract than many would have guessed. A second-year head coach, brand new DC, and a makeshift defense that hasn't been put together, and an offense that might take a huge step down from their elite play only a couple months ago. And the biggest tell of how this season will go stems from the moves that will be made in free agency. What's up, guys? Dallas Talks Tua here, taking a look at what the holes the Cowboys need to fill this offseason through free agency. I wanted to start off with the defense, as this is where we have the clearest holes on the team. The most obvious ones that you can just see watching 5 minutes to even a quarter of the football game. With a bottom tier defense and a historically bad unit as it was, it's pretty much shit, and Eberflus deserves some of the blame, but it wasn't just all on him. I think anyone that watched this season knew he was a bad defensive coordinator, as well as personnel was equally as bad, with some of the most impactful positions being our worst, and at the same time the hardest and most expensive to fill out. The Joneses have some big calls to be made. The major holes on this team are cornerback and defensive end, at least on the defensive end of the ball. Our less impactful but still kind of glaring positions would be linebacker and safety. Now, when you look at these four positions, the two easiest and cheapest positions to fill out would be our less major positions in the linebacker and safety. Now, I know the first thing many of you are thinking is that it's pretty typical of Jerry being cheap, but not in this case. When deciding how to spend our money, we need to be a bit strategic and include the future into evaluating things. We could very easily spend more to fill our holes in the defensive end position and cornerback position, and then fill out the linebacker and safety spots in the draft. The problem with that is it wouldn't allow for much flexibility in the future on any of our internal players that are going to be earning larger contracts, as we already are pretty top heavy in our team. Dak, C, Bland, Tyler Smith, Quentin Williams, Kinney, and Osa, some of our biggest contracts. Now, if we do the opposite, where we pay our safeties and linebackers in the free agency and draft a corner and DN, you can save yourself some serious money, or at least delay it and give yourself some more time to work out contracts, restructure, things of that sort, to give yourself some flexibility. This is assuming you hit on your draft picks, but both situations, it's an assumption that we're going to hit on our draft picks, which may not be the reality, but for this case, we're going to assume so. With having your DN and cornerback be on rookie deals, you have a good 4 to 5 seasons where you don't have to pay them, and this allows you to use your money elsewhere and build a more well-rounded team, rather than paying 3 to 5 guys and going cheap everywhere else. Regardless on if you think we should draft or sign our major weak spots, one thing is for sure, you must hit on your draft picks as well. As important as free agency is, the draft also is, but that is for a different video. The good thing about our offense is that most of our major players are under contract, but what that means is we might not have a lot to spend on our offense, which can hurt pretty bad, because this unit does have some glaring holes, and there's a real chance it regresses a good amount. Let's start with the chance of a regression, and it starts and stems from George Pickens. I don't know how realistic the rumors are, but the George Pickens getting traded rumors, they're getting louder, and I don't really like that. George was amazing for us, and I think you definitely saw a tamer side of him, or at least a more hidden side of him. Overall, it would be a pretty good return on investment, as we didn't really give that high of a pick. I think it was some day 2 picks, and overall you get a season of a top 5 wide receiver, and I'm assuming you're going to get better than a day 2 pick or 2. But I think his play would be the thing that you would kind of miss a lot more than anything. You know, if George gets traded, we're kind of back in a situation where wide receiver is a big problem for us, as it's really just CD. Now, Ryan Flournoy was cooking when we saw him, and he took a massive step this year, but we're banking on another big step to where he's filling a hole of a top 5 wide receiver. Now, I love Ryan Flournoy, and if he takes a huge step and becomes a top 5 wide receiver, fuck man, you can just give him the keys to the city. But let's be realistic, the odds that happen are a lot smaller if we just keep George. Like, realistically, if it comes down to if George plays like a top 5 wide receiver and Ryan Flournoy does, I think there's one clear answer that's more likely than the other. And I get you probably don't want to pay him $40 million or reset the market with him, but I think you can definitely find where he's getting paid more than the franchise tag and you don't cripple yourself. And that's really the only potential hole. Both the holes on offense are really potential holes, where if we go one way, it becomes a hole. If we don't, we're perfectly fine. The real major hole that I think is not really being talked as much is our tackle play. This season, the tackles were pretty poor, especially on the right end. Guyton made some steps in his play, and I think it would be smart for us to just leave him be and allow him to keep growing. I mean, he's only going into his 3rd year, and he improved off of a pretty horrible rookie season. Granted, going from 0 to 3, I mean, it's improvement, but ultimately I felt like he was pretty solid in a lot of the games, especially in the later half of the season. Steele, on the other hand, is someone who isn't a rookie, and we know and we've probably seen the best football from him that anyone else is going to get for the rest of his career. And as of last year, he was a pretty piss poor pass protector, pretty good in the run, but wasn't elite. And I'd say he's getting paid for an elite run blocker. And on top of that, if his best attribute is run blocking, and it's probably just going to get worse from here, his pass blocking is already terrible, so that's going to get worse. I don't really care how great he is in the run if he's letting our $50+ million QB take multiple hits a game, especially when that QB has kind of had some years where when he gets injured, it is major and he's out for the rest of the season. This offense is best at a balanced attack, which cannot happen with a poor right tackle. And I think with Javonte being signed now, your only real hole is right tackle, and we should at least play with the idea of releasing Steele, getting some cap money, and maybe hitting the free agency. I would prefer not to use a draft pick on another cap tackle, especially one of the 1st round picks. I think you reserve those for defense, but overall, you could live with Steele. I would prefer not to. I don't really trust him. Now, some underrated spots that I think are ones that people aren't really thinking about just because the defense is so obvious, and then the George Pickens stuff's kind of what draws it in. And then I'd say the next is probably the left tackle situation, just because things got kind of weird with it. And we'll get into more about what was so weird about the tackle position last season in a bit. But the first one I want to start is your backup running back. Now, Javonte is great, but he won't be great if we run him into the ground. And by all means, he deserves the contract he got. I would say I had a video where I kind of talked about him. It's 1 year, so I am kind of skeptical on the production, just because with any sport, I've seen a million times where a guy, for whatever reason, breaks out and then gets paid, and he goes back to the guy that kind of everyone thought he would be, especially with a guy who's had as bad injury history as Javonte. Well, aside from this season, he was pretty healthy, so he has earned his contract. I am hoping he continues to earn his contract. But that being said, we are going to run him into the ground if we continue to play him the way we did this season. We need a backup running back. And with Sanders coming off a pretty big injury, Jaden Blue having an up and down season, we don't really have a solid backup, or one that we at least know what we're going to get. And that concerns me. Everyone saw Williams slow down in the second half of the season, and it hurt the offense quite a bit. A backup running back is something that the Cowboys should not consider a fixed issue. The next one is more of a situation depending on how the Guyton stuff is handled. And this is what I talked about with things being weird. So during the later half of the season, with Guyton being out, they were testing Nate Thomas at left tackle and right tackle, and they're kind of switching him around. And then eventually it was Tyler Smith who played left tackle, and many started to believe that this should be the case moving forward. I would lose a big piece of my hope in this team if this is what happens. With that move, we see a significant drop in play at the left guard position as TJ Bass steps into that position. Now, TJ Bass is a pretty damn good backup, but he's just that. He is a backup, and going from an all-pro to a backup is a steep and heavy drop, especially when we play the Eagles, who have all-pro defensive tackles coming out of their ass. This is something that I think, if it becomes a whole, we have a huge issue on our hands. Now, I want to say, I think there's some obvious huge holes in the defense, but I think some of the offensive holes are things that we could be looking week 10 in and be like, how did we miss this? Like, this is really detrimental to this team's success, especially the right tackle. I can't tell you how many times I saw a potential scoring drive get cut short or ruined by Terrence Steele, whether he gave up a pressure where Dak had to throw it away or rush it or couldn't hit the guy he wanted to, or a sack or a penalty. It was tremendously terrible for this team, and I think that's my biggest concern. I think the backup running back issue isn't that bad, as I think there's options. I'm hoping Miles Sanders returns. He was pretty solid for us at the start. Jaden Blue showed some flashes. Phil Maffa looked pretty good. And I think we are a team that's going to value our running backs playing a big part in pass protection. And Javonte is a stud at that. So I don't think the running back concerns me that much. I think Jaden Blue, Phil Maffa, as well as Miles Sanders are enough to where one of them's likely to be a solid backup. What concerns me is my quarterback taking hits, and if we decide to move an all-pro left guard to become an average left tackle, because that is what Tyler Smith is. He is an average left tackle. He can play it, but he is amazing as a left guard. So let's keep our guys in the position that they are the best in. That's really all I got for you guys. Let me know what holes you guys think Jerry should prioritize this offseason down in the comments, and be on the lookout for the next video being more on specific players that we can sign in free agency.